welcome back. It's PowerHouse Finch Show. Zach Shue here. And
Dan Turbyville over here.
Hey, you're over there. Welcome back, everybody. This is season 2, episode 30-ish.
Yes.
And we're going to do a little series about, I guess, our process.
Yeah.
So we'll, pull back the curtain a little more. I like to say that on the internal process and workings and improvings thereof. So this is a podcast, obviously, also available in video for some, that centers around the commercial fence industry. So we're going to talk about things that pertain to fence building, mostly from a business perspective, generally commercial business driven.
Yep. That's what we try to do here.
That's right. So get in, strap in, climb on, get out your plan sets, put on your hard hat, roll up your sleeve. Let's go to work.
Let's do it, man. All right. So our show is presented by Memphis Fence Company, MFC Manufacturing, Simpolo, and the Thornton Fence Consulting Group.
Cool.
There should be a link to the events for the Thornton Fence Consulting Group in the description of this podcast, and you should definitely get to one of those events and check it out. You will come back with something.
Most of those presenters, if you just use the businessname.com, you should be able to find them pretty easy.
Yeah, that's right.
Quick Google search will tone up a lot of things. So again,
It will.
Dan, Zach, we are here. This is pre-recorded as we have some stuff going on, and probably will for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. So this week and next week we'll both be recording, so we won't be live for a couple of weeks. But I think these are good, man. I started making like the agenda for the show, and I thought we would be able to split this thing up into 2.
Okay,
Right.
but can we say whose idea was this? Probably. Can we give credit?
Whose idea was this?
Mine.
What'd you say?
Oh.
I gave great suggestions.
Ilaria was definitely instrumental in directing us for the content in this, as you should be. And
Good job, Ilaria.
Thank you, Ilaria.
Wrong one.
All right.
Yay!
There you
Thank
go.
you, Ilaria.
All
Cool.
right. So started going through, and I was like, man, this is not going to fit in 2 shows, right? So
Cool.
sorry, viewers, you're going to have to endure this a little bit more than 2 episodes, but I think it should be good. I'm pretty excited about it.
They
I
don't
think
have
it'll be
to,
good
man.
stuff.
They come here if they want to. They're
Yeah.
here by choice. Which is
That's a good point. You
fantastic.
are free to leave if you'd like.
That's right.
So,
But welcome to stay. More importantly.
we would like you to stay. So, all right, let's do this, man. So you already talked about it's recorded. We're not here. So you've been listening to or reading anything exciting that we should talk about?
I'm
or-
looking it up right now.
Okay.
I'm still reading Tony's book, 7 Strategies,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly going through there. In fact, there are pretty good notes and diagrams in the book, but I find it beneficial. I guess everyone who studies does, to take my own versions, even if I'm just kind of copying down what the book says. But I've also taken one of his charts and turned it in. I like graphic design, and I like things to be aesthetically pleasing.
You like visuals.
I love them. Love some visuals. So there's some good ones in the book, but I'm making ones that are Memphis Fence personalized as I go through.
Yeah.
Right. One of which was an outline on building a mission statement, which we have done some of.
Yeah, I think we talked about that, and I was like, I've made a mission statement like 4 times, and it's still never been published or
Right.
is nowhere other than me just playing around with it and making it.
Sure. And I mean, you and I have exchanged it back and forth, which we do, but I think my vision or understanding of that would be one. I think if we were to be able to just ask a random employee what Memphis Fence's mission statement is, then they would have at least be able to answer a couple of the questions.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
that would be ideal for them to be able to say, "Oh, this is what we're doing here."
Right. What are we doing here? And that
Yeah.
was really one that stood out to me, is like, why do we do what we do?
Mm-hmm.
Not just because your grandfather started a fence business,
And
but we have to take some measure of personal enjoyment or investment in this.
not just because this is like the place that was hiring. I hope, you know.
Right. So I'm reading that book. I've started to, my son is 13, and it was interesting. I was at a wedding with a bunch of, a bunch of other dads, and well, ended up talking to a bunch of other dads a couple of which happened to also have 13-year-old sons. And they basically were just, one suggested directly, an older guy was like, you know what I did? I read to my son every night.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it when they were little.
Yeah.
And now that they've kind of grown into their own person, I just kind of let them do what they want to do. But he's 13. I want to form some lasting relationship with him, and kind of maintain that friendship and what I consider to be kind of a pivotal moment in teen. At least I think it is. I don't know. It's my perception. So one older guy said, read to him. And then another dude about my age was just talking about doing it. And the book that came up was The Hobbit, which I don't currently have. But what I did was just get a book and start reading it, basically. And it's called something like The Adventures of Socrates. And it's not as prolific as it sounds, but it's pretty. There's a character in the book who's nicknamed by his grandfather Socrates, but there is some parallel of history. So it's a little history, little fiction, all rolled into one. Starts with pretty good opening. Starts with a kid who is recently committed a murder, and that's how it gets you hooked. A lot of names that are in Russian, which I find hard to pronounce, and never quite know if I'm pronouncing them right, which is kind of awkward trying to read to your kid when you can't pronounce the words. But outside of that, it's been pretty cool. And he's, pretty resistant to that whole thing at first, but now we're kind of moving into it. And he's like, I don't want to. And then the next thing I know, we're doing, and he's like into it. So
yeah, well, that's cool.
Yeah, man. So that's what we've been doing.
So we read to our kids, but they're both small.
Yeah. And that's like, it makes sense, right? Because but I think ultimately, I don't know if this may be just me, but it's like the pressure of them being prepared for kindergarten is like why I read to them. Not exactly that, but some of that.
Yeah.
Maybe
it's we started off as, it was from like an intellectual perspective, and now it's just kind of a part of our bedtime routine. So we just kind of do it.
Yeah, we did for a long time. I mean, I think up until 8 or 9, and then they kind of, I guess I felt like they matured out of it. Of course, they stopped wanting to. And so, it's been cool to kind of rekindle that and then, force the 13-year-old.
I'm kind of curious to see like how long it lasts for us.
Right.
I mean, at what point are they no longer interested in, sitting down at bedtime and reading a book or whatever? So,
right. For sure, man.
So, well, I haven't really been reading or listening to anything new. Still the same old stuff, man. The Founders Podcast is fascinating to me. I found myself referencing a book that I read a while ago, Extreme Ownership, a couple times today.
Me too.
That's pretty cool. I don't know if this is really like my first time, but this is maybe the first time that I've been like in conversation with someone and said, "Hey, wait a minute. I read this book a year ago or whatever. And this is what it said. So like, here's how that applies to this situation." That was pretty cool.
I read an email chain, I guess is what it is. I'm subscribed to this email chain that's geared towards kind of like social media influencers or social media marketing. And it got me because it had like some kind of metaphysical catchphrase at the beginning, and it was like better your life or something like that. So I just subscribed to see what this guy's talking about. Oh, it was like work less, or like do 8 hours of work in 4 hours or something. And I've been interested in that concept that like you don't have to be busy at full volume running 100% power to be efficient at your job, because efficiency is
the opposite of that, I think.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So I was like, what's this guy talking about? But the one that I read yesterday was basically a step-by-step reteach yourself to read. Not to learn to read, but to like to read.
Okay.
And so, and the point that he made, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but that was pretty interesting to be reading a blog, I guess is what you call that, a blog about teaching yourself to enjoy reading and the necessities and benefit of like reading physical books, right? I mean, we listen to podcasts, we listen to books on tape. You know, I read the subtitles when I watch a movie.
Right. Yeah.
I basically only read subtitles. My hearing's not very good.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, instead of turning it up to max volume, I just leave it at low and read the subtitles. But either way, but that was interesting though. What he started with was like, you know, we have this condition of, we think about reading as being in the institutional version that you learned in school, where you read some book you didn't give a crap about, and then
That we were
kind of like
to read.
marginally participated in a book, in a what do you call that when you do a report, right? So then give a report, a book report, then give some kind of a report.
Ooh,
and
that's
so
a good idea. What if we did book reports here? What if it was like, here, Zach, you have to read
right
Extreme
after you
Ownership.
and I, right after you and I
report.
both said, yeah, those things sucked. Reading stuff you don't want to do for a reason you don't want to have to do.
You know how
wait
is
a
this
minute.
called in the girls' world? Book club.
Right. I don't know that that's is it gender specific, book club?
I don't know.
I don't know. You guys call it a book report. That's why I said how we call it.
Well, so no, like a book report is the school version where you have to present what you read to the class, right?
Yeah,
but
in this country,
Memphis Fence Company Book Club. Let's do it.
That's an interesting idea.
Cool. That's enough.
I don't hate it.
That's enough about books, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So thank you, listeners, for being here. Thank you for enduring the whole story about books and our book club idea and book reports. So
this podcast sucks.
Well, looks like we're pretty much out of time now. So yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. All the continued support. All of that is fantastic. If you have any suggestions about guests or topics or anything else you'd like to hear us talk about, please let us know.
All I heard was books.
Yeah, them too.
If you have any more books and you want to send us some books and talk about books, then
hey, that's a cool idea. If you
then
want
write us a book.
Send us a book if you want, for real. That's interesting.
I'll read segments of the book to you.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to the West Coast show in Reno, in Ravino. I almost said that's Ravino.
I keep wanting to call it Vegas too. I'm just like, we're going to Vegas. It's so close.
It is, but
I've never been to Reno. I'm excited.
I've never been to Reno. So yeah,
I've started
go check
getting
it out.
some swag stuff together, swag bags, branded materials.
So we will be giving stuff away.
Yeah, got some new PowerHouse Fence Show sunglasses coming out.
Nice.
You like how I said it all cool too?
Yeah.
I need to get some jerseys, for all my fans. And yeah, man.
What about, are we giving out autograph headshots this time, or was that next time?
That is yet to be disclosed.
Oh, okay.
So we're working on that.
Whoops.
You gotta keep some secrets.
Sorry. Right, so I'm getting that stuff together today with the help of Ilaria and Alyssa, of course. Not all by myself. Almost everything we do around here is a team effort, man. And to some degree, that can be a little crazy and unorganized or inefficient, but at the same time, I think it's kind of what helps us stay close and makes the workday more enjoyable, I guess.
There's a lot of camaraderie here.
Right, exactly.
And that's cool. So yeah.
Did you use Simpalo this week?
I did use Simpalo this week.
Was it helpful? Did you consider it helpful?
I did, actually. Believe it or not, I did find it to be helpful.
That's amazing. So
I don't really have any great stories to go.
Mine is the same one from last week. Guess what?
Did a fence track job, and so I figured out how many panels we needed in Simpalo. But I mean, like, that's kind of the only thing unique, I guess.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's working pretty good. I don't do any math.
We use Simpalo. It does good.
It does good. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. It's the same story. Scanned in a hand drawing, drew a fence line on it, ran a takeoff, came up with a material list by way of drawing some lines.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Showed some other people what it can do.
Right. So pretty functional, but we have some exciting plans, and we are consistently brainstorming about ways to improve Sao Paulo,
Well,
and futurize.
yeah, we'll talk about that in some
Yeah.
future episodes.
That's what I'm saying, baby.
It's here on the show notes, but it's in red, so we're not going to tell you what it means or what it is.
Now it is time for our favorite time. It is time for the Italian word of the week with Ilaria Pisoni.
The word of the week is process.
Oh, processo.
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 Yeah, that was easy.
Good. We needed an easy one. And now,
Make Dan say it right, though. He said it kind of.
Say it again, then.
what you say it again.
Okay, processo.
You say it again.
Processo.
Sorry. I don't know why that was funny to me.
It is. It's fun. That's why we do it, because it's funny. It worked.
Processo.
It's okay.
I'm not good at it. We all know this.
Oh, usually you're better than this.
Last week you were
Processo.
on time, man.
Processo.
Processo.
All right.
Little
And
doggy.
now this is the moment I really am looking forward to. Are we doing it?
Yeah, is this your request? Dan has presented me with a poem he would like me to recite for you all.
In pirate voice.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. I haven't practiced.
So that's why it's still in here.
I don't even know what a pirate voice sounds like. Play me a snippet of a pirate voice.
Arr, matey.
Those
Slay.
words you just read, those are the words. Those words aren't in there.
No, I know.
So you want me to convert like the my's to me's and all that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Me tired. That like, oh, I got it. SpongeBob, right? So the intro to SpongeBob. That dude's a pirate. Me tired of sailing me little boat far inside the harbor bar. I want to be. You don't say that as a pirate. I want to be out where the big ships float, on the deep where the great ones are. And should me frail craft prove too slight for storms that sweep those wide seas o'er, better go down in the stirring fight than drown to death by the shelter. I got drunker and drunker. Drowsed to death by the sheltered shores are by Daisy Reinhardt.
That did not disappoint. It was worth leaving it in there for a month. Awesome. Thanks.
Was it piratey enough for you?
Yeah, it was okay. It was probably
You want a Jack Sparrow? I mean, what pirate? Who are we going for?
Yeah. Jack Sparrow next time. All right. Should we get down to business?
It was like a grandpa leprechaun.
Yeah.
Who smokes too much, you know?
All right.
Let's get down to business.
Okay.
Introduction to the show. Let's get into the topic of the show.
So as we talked about, we decided to go through our process, right? Open the curtains, whatever word you want to put in there to kind of reveal the behind the scenes stuff that happens. I
love the draw back the curtain. You know, Wizard of Oz. I was about to pirate. I don't know why. I'm going to do it again eventually. There's nothing magical back there, man. It's like they go and meet the Oz, and then they're like, it's kind of underwhelming because it's just like, dude.
Oh no, this is going to be overwhelming.
I just say, I think, I don't know. I think I don't mean to marginalize us or whatever, but I just think there's nothing magical we're doing that no one else can do.
No, it's not
That's my
anything
point.
magical.
We're two regular guys.
Yeah, but
And this is a regular company, but we work pretty hard to work pretty hard.
So here's what happened to me. I went through this thing. I'm actually actively going through this thing in my life where someone called me and they're like, hey man, I'm really struggling with XYZ at my fence company. And so I listened to their problems and I was like, oh, hey, I have an idea. Let me tell you what you can do. Why don't you try this? Right. And it was like I could just immediately easily come up with a suggestion of something that they should do different at their own business. Well, and then I felt like I got hit by a Mack truck because I was like, wait a minute. Why can I do that for them, but I can't do that for myself? Like, why can we not take that type of look at Memphis Fence Company?
Right.
and kind of apply it, or apply any kind of like improvements or updates or whatever word, I don't know, to our own business here. And so that's kind of where I started like a couple weeks ago. And I think I've mentioned something to you a few times about like I'm doing that thing. Oh, the operations management school. That
Yeah, it
was
was. I
that
think.
thing.
I think it was a couple days. It grew. The idea grew over the course of a couple days, and then I came in and talked to you about a friend's business, and listen to this guy's situation with this business.
Yeah.
And then, which at first it started as like, whoa, this would suck if it happened to us in business. But then it also transpired into, here's what I think they should do next.
Right. Exactly. And so it's like, why can we do that to other people, but we can't do it to ourselves?
Sure. I got an idea why you can't, or why I can't, at least. I think being so close to it, the severity of the decision be resulting in detriment to the company. I could tell you to do it, and if it like, oops, oh, sorry, that didn't work out for you.
Yeah.
But for me,
that sucks, but hey, it was an idea.
Right. So it's kind of not necessarily the too busy pushing the car to put gas in, but it's kind of like how the fear of stopping production to implement software. It's like it, whatever that takes, it's the risk is too great to make the change that I don't really trust at the reward. If it doesn't work out, I'd rather have what I have now than totally blow it.
So you're not confident that the change is going to make improvement enough to stop what you're doing and try the change.
And then there's also now that I've had the idea and put my finger on what needs to happen, now I'm the one responsible for making it happen.
Yeah, see, I don't know if that's it for me. I think really just the challenge of getting
to the
point where I've had the idea is the hard part.
Right.
And I mean, man, we've made bukus of changes and done things different ways over the course of the last 10 or 12 years.
Right.
And it's been like, oh, hey, we've been doing it this way. It's okay. Let's try something else. And so, I mean, I'm pretty well down for trying. I know, but anyway, it's a weird thing. Right. So
basically I think the word I use the words plan view ultimately. So let's kind of take an overhead grand plan view of the current operations to assess. And that's where we'll start.
Yeah.
And I think that's how I designated the ability to look at someone else's companies, because you're not in it. You're above it or out of it. You're removed to be able to see the big picture, so to speak. So we're going to zoom out a little bit, start looking at our company, our operations, our processes, our policies and procedures, and that's what we're going to bring to you guys.
So we do that. I almost said periodically, but I think more consistently we look at that stuff. But kind of like the roadblock we get is, stopping to put gas in the car. I feel like with policies and processes and procedures and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so along those same lines, though, what I did first, I went and started writing on the board.
Right.
And I was like, all right, here's all the people. Here's how the phone calls go. Here's what everybody does. And just kind of like started brain dumping about how this business functions. So all of that ties into this podcast episode that we're doing right now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through that with everyone and try to explain it the best we can. And maybe, I don't know, if we find some improvements along the way or something, that's great. If you have ideas, let us know. And maybe we're doing something that you're like, oh, hey, that's a good idea. I should do that.
Okay. So first, let's talk about organizational structure, or just structure overall in general. I guess not organizational necessarily, but we do have multiple classes. We have business to business commercial, general contractor commercial, ornamental, and that's pretty much it. We have all, but I will pick up very few and far between residential jobs, but outside of that,
so we really have like 10 classes.
Right. That's right.
Right. But
wholesale, I forgot about wholesale.
Yeah. So I think it's important to kind of talk about, like Zach said, the structure of how we operate our business. And so that's these different classes. And so there's some of them that are like tied together though, right? So like powder coating is a class of its own, but it's tied in with ornamental. And so when I say we have 10 different classes, a lot of them are like pairs, right? So things that are related are separated. And so what that does is it lets me be able to see how much money we spent powder coating versus how much money we could have just hired someone else to do it. Right. And then how much money did it cost us to have a powder coat operation versus how much money did we charge customers for providing that part of the service? So it's just another way to peel the onion back and get a little bit deeper into your own data and your own finances and stuff like that. So all of these classes kind of operate as like independent companies in a sense that are owned by the same like holding company. I think I tried to, maybe last time we talked about it, I kind of used the analogy of like, we have a general overhead that's things that can't be directly allocated to a class. And that is something like paying membership dues to the holding company or, something like that. I'm sure there's some better way to word that. I just don't know it. So yeah, that was kind of, I don't know, the basics of it. All the jobs are ran through a class. Depending on the type of the job, there is crossover that we experience where, like you mentioned, residential. So we used to have a residential class, and initially the ornamental custom fabricated jobs that were for a residential customer ran through the residential class. So then I was like, no, I don't like that. And we pulled it out and we started running those through ornamental as well. So it was like the commercial ornamental jobs went in ornamental, but if it was residential and ornamental, it went in residential. So we've kind of like tweaked where those jobs go and stuff like that over the years. And now, we have separated powder coating out of that as its own class. And so we just kind of keep getting more complex, which is, we've been like, the other day we talked about how are we going to control, like, what can we do anything to try to cut down on overhead and control costs and all of this?
Right.
And here we are talking about how complicated our accounting system is and how it takes 12 people to try to keep up with it. Right.
That's right. So, I think I kind of muddled divisions and classes together there a moment ago. And ultimately what I was describing is the divisions, how we're divided ultimately. Yeah. And then the classing is kind of a whole different thing as far as accounting is concerned.
Yeah.
But the notes here say each class has an operations manager, which is partly true. Some of those classes actually fall under a division, like you said, right? So we have 3 division managers.
Yeah, so I would say
or 4, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. So I guess you, Randy, Alyssa, Claiborne, Donnie.
Oh yeah.
Like y'all all have your own divisions.
You're right.
So so like with Zach specifically, again, ornamental and powder coating both go under Zach. Right. So then
in the same way that Randy's chain link and install, he also has the chain link fabrication shop.
Yep. So, people will run like multiple classes. So there's classes is how it's separated to look like its own business in our accounting system. Division class. We can kind of interchange those almost sometimes, but anyways, hopefully that makes any kind of sense, right? So like we have a department head or division manager, operation manager, general manager at the top of each division. So if it's an ornamental job that we custom build ornamental fence for, then that falls in Zach's world, right? If it's like a business to business commercial, then that falls into Randy's world.
That's right.
And so those people are all responsible for their departments.
That's right.
Most of the time, these classes, they have dedicated crews or team members, dedicated vehicles and equipment and stuff like that. Again, there's crossover with that. Like, we're all the same company. So like you can pull crews off one place and stick them in another place when you need to. And
right. We've had a little bit of that. There have been a couple of chain link guys floating around. So they've been over in the ornamental shop helping out. So their labor the past couple of days will be billed to a ornamental job.
That's right. Yep. And so when that happens, those guys, like you said, their labor will be classed as ornamental then. And then, if they're doing just random stuff like cleanup, maintenance, anything like that, then their time is normally billed back to their home class. All right. So just to kind of like try to tie a little bit of a ribbon on that. Okay. I know that was a lot of crazy stuff, but we'll use divisions, right? So we have.
Why you didn't always do this? I mean, it's been like 2 years, I think, that you really have gotten that deep into it because
So it just progressively keeps getting deeper.
And so where did the necessity for the gas
I want more data.
Right. Right.
Right.
Isn't it easier to like keep track of what's going well or not the deeper you get? After all,
Yes.
yeah.
Right. So what we were looking at yesterday?
Yeah.
No, day before. We looked at a 5-year time period, and we looked at every expense line item in there for 5 years
Right.
to try to look at trends and things like that. But then we can take, so if we took, I don't know, electric utilities, right? So then we could take that line item of utilities and we could get even deeper into it. And now we could separate it out by class, and we could say, oh, okay, well, we added a new building that we now are powder coating in. And when that happened, we saw our utilities increase.
Right.
And so you have access to all of that stuff sitting right in the accounting system. If we didn't have it separated and we just ran it all through one, then we basically have to like pull out invoices and, bills and stuff like that to try to like get a little deeper into it. But like having it all separated like that, it really allows us to dive deep into the data and really start picking out specific stuff, right? We've talked on the show before about how every one of our trucks has its own expense account, right?
Mhm.
So they're all sub accounts of like the auto expense, but every one of them has its own account. And that's another thing we looked at. We
That's
could
right.
look
To
at,
see which one of these things was responsible for the leak. You know what I
right.
mean?
So we could look at each individual truck and see exactly how much money we spent on repairs and maintenance and all of that stuff for that truck over the course of
Right.
a day, week, month, year, whatever it is. You just, I mean, in general, people just have to decide like how detailed you want to get on that information. Obviously, we have it pretty detailed here. I like data. I like having information available at my fingertips. I frequently sit and sift through that data while everyone else is gone home, and there's no one to ask questions to. So I like having it there where I can just look. But okay, so the divisions. I think we kind of mentioned this a little bit, right? If it's a wood job, it goes through one. If it's a custom built ornamental job, it goes through another. If it's a business to business commercial job, it goes through another. If it's a job for a general contractor, it goes through another. If it's wholesale or retail, then it goes through another. So that's kind of how all of our departments are set up as far as like revenue earning classes.
Right.
So we do have some other ones that don't earn their revenue, but yeah, we have a class called special projects where random crap gets stuck in there. So like buying podcast equipment probably went in there. But anyways, all right. So now we kind of went over all that, right? The first one that we're going to look at is residential. And we actually don't even do residential fence anymore. But what we're going to take a look at is the way that it was all set up when we stopped doing it. And
This will
just
be fun. I'll try to pretend to know what we're talking about.
Right,
I had
so-
zero participation in that.
you'll know some of the stuff though, because
Save for having worked for that department at one a little bit lower down the chain there.
yeah, because so when you came on, did we stop doing residential then, or did we stop a year before you came back?
I think it was a year before, and we were just basically tidying up the remainder of finishing
like
some
some
jobs and
callbacks or something?
callbacks and warranty issues or whatever, like
Right.
some stuff like that, and
Yeah.
a ton of inquiries and new leads for residential work.
Yeah.
Sorting that out because we had obligated ourselves to at least provide them some kind of at least a contact,
Right.
call them and let them know or whatever, right? So
yeah, so yeah, all right.
I'm a new call. Ring ring ring.
Right.
What happens to me next?
So Zach, when you would call in, what we did when the phone rang, or we got a new lead through the website form or whatever, however that lead came to us, then we would try to get on the phone with them and we would take care of as much of the information as we could on that one call. Right. So that was a thing that I was kind of adamant about. I didn't want to have to call them 2 or 3 times and gather more information and all of this stuff before scheduling an appointment. I wanted there to be one phone call. And on that one phone call, what we did was we captured their information and we would reuse my salesman, and not sponsored, just legitimately. We would use my salesman and we would give them budget numbers over the phone. So every
In the book, 7 Strategies, they call this pre-qualifying.
pre-qualifying, that's exactly what we were
And
doing.
there's, if you ever look at the website, they have a sheet available that is a list of questions
Mm-hmm.
to ask the customer to thoroughly pre-qualify your customer.
Yep. Yep.
Very cool. My favorite one on the list is, what do you need this fence to do?
Yep. I love that question.
Me too, man.
I learned that back in like 2013 or 14. We signed up with some deal. It was like an Active Yards Home Depot kind of thing, and it was a complete flop for us. It was absolutely terrible. But when we signed up for that, I think that was one of the things that came from Active Yards.
That's cool.
Right, because I think that's how Active Yards has their had their products like divided, was based on what the fence was doing.
Love it.
Right, versus like a type or anything. It was kind of like the point of the fence is privacy. Oh, okay. Well, here's what we have to offer as a solution for that. So yeah, I'm a fan of that, and that's what we would ask them actually in the residential world.
Right.
When people called, we would have that conversation and ask them what they want the fence to do for them, right?
Yeah, so I did engage in this process a bit. So if they did, after saying, "Hey, I'd like to put together the quick thing for you to give you kind of some budget numbers," using my salesman, which I actually do this now with the residential customers that come through Ornamental, give them a budget range, say, and then, how does that feel? Are you comfortable with that? If they're comfortable, then we'll proceed and schedule a site visit, physical site visit. So we're not applying unnecessary resources for site visit just off the rip.
Yep. And so the reason we do it, and we did it for everyone in the residential world, was because at first, when we initially signed up, we would see people like drawing fence lines out in the middle of the ocean and all this stuff. And it was like completely random. And some of them obviously could do it well, right? But then you got like a whole group of people that are not very familiar with computers, or not as well versed in using a computer as what someone in a modern office setting would be. Or they're trying to do it on their phone or whatever, and it would just kind of get messy. So we stopped sending them the link and we started running it ourselves.
Right.
And then the alternative was, if you did not want to go through this virtual budget process or virtual estimate process, then we would charge them to come run an estimate.
Right.
And if we charged you $150, whatever that was, to come out and give you an estimate, then
be a credit applied to your bill if you
That's
went
right.
with us for the fence job.
That's right.
That's right.
But we were really trying to do our best to pre-qualify. The vast majority of people were receptive to doing this virtual estimate. And we would tell people like, "Oh, you don't have time to do it right now? Well, no problem. Just when can we call you back?" Right. So that, to me, is the way to do it. When can we call you back? Right. And schedule a time right then that you can pick up the phone and you can call them back, and they have time set aside to sit down and listen to you. Instead of the whole, "Oh, well, just give me a call back when you have time to do it." Right. I don't like that.
No, that doesn't really secure any sales, in my opinion.
Yep.
You have to afford the ask.
Yep.
And if a customer's nosing around, that's not good customer service.
Right. Right.
They're like, "Oh, you called me for a service. Well, why don't you get digging, and then we'll come out there and check on you in a little while."
Right. Yep. Yep. So we would, try to set up a time when we could call them back and then do it then. And so that worked pretty well, right? We would go through the whole thing. It worked well. Now, keep in mind, like, the volume of calls that we were getting, though. So we'll talk a decent bit about Monday.com, right? We use Monday.com, also not sponsored, just telling you what we do. And so in there, I had it set up to where I could see, it would like color the leads different colors based on what day they would call. And I mean, there was days when we were getting like 45 calls in a day, right? People would ask us for a price on residential fence like 40, 50 times a day, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, before we were doing my salesman, we were trying to schedule all these, and we would wind up with like a, 8-week lead time just on appointments. And that's not good for anything, because then all of your good and bad leads are just going somewhere else because you can't get to them fast enough. They want a fence installed in 8 weeks. They don't want you to come talk to them about it in 8 weeks. So that was kind of the reason we swapped to that. And so we had a full-time person, and their job was basically to do this my salesman stuff. And then, we'll get a little bit further into what they did here in a while, but we just had them doing that basically all day and scheduling appointments. So we scheduled the appointments for the salespeople, like in the office. We didn't just hand it to them and tell them to figure it out. They were running something like 4 calls a day. So we had it set up to where it was, like 4-5 calls a day. We would set them up to where they had at least like an hour and a half per call.
Right.
And so when we swapped to my salesman, it cut down enough of the calls that we could then extend the length of our appointments. And by extending the length of it, we were able to spend a little bit more time with the customer. It put less of a strain or pressure onto our salespeople, so they would have more time to actually make a sale, I guess you could say. And then the biggest thing of it was they were making less mistakes and they were missing less details. So a part of the reason that we led up to this, I went and did a fence job, and it was to tear out and replace an existing fence. And I went and tore out the back line, and it was all in a retaining wall. And like, there was nothing on any information. The sales guy, he had no idea that there was a retaining wall there or anything.
Wow.
And I was like, no. We can't just do this, because at this point we've committed to install a fence for X amount of money. We can't go back and be like, oh man, did you know there was a wall there?
Yeah, your guy came and stood on it.
Right. That's right. And so that was one of the like pivotal moments for me. I was like, holy crap, we are not spending enough time paying enough attention to all these details, and we're not capturing
Are you
enough
guys,
information.
this was before Monday, so you're still using the hand-drawn, handwritten?
Well, so all of the estimates we did in residential were hand-drawn and handwritten.
But at this time, you had at least had Monday starting, so you could take some photos.
Yeah, we had Monday. And so the problem was he had taken pictures from inside the yard, but not outside. There was an alleyway behind the backyard, and that retaining wall was, on the side of that alley. And so he didn't go to look at the other side of the fence. He only looked at one side, and you couldn't see the wall from the inside with the old fence
looks
standing
good from
there,
my house.
Right. Yeah. But we had Monday then. We just he just didn't have enough time to actually do his job. So
at this point, once you have they're doing 4 appointments a day, right? They're able to spend a little more time. They're in potentially not missing retaining walls. Also, I think making the customer feel a bit more comfortable.
Oh yeah.
Getting more information, getting to know the need they're meeting, I guess.
And you never want to meet somebody at your house that is like a salesperson that's rushed. Right. Oh, what do you want? Yeah. You want it here? You want it there? Come on. I need you to make a choice.
Just sign the check. I gotta go.
Right. That's not good for anybody either. So
they're quoting jobs on the spot.
Yep.
And you guys are doing like a price per foot model for quoting.
Well, hold on. I need to back up just a second here. So, when scheduling calls, we used a zip code map. And so we would try to schedule them like in the same or in neighboring zip codes. And that was the way that we figured out where they were.
Right.
But all right, sorry. So go ahead. Yeah, we were quoting on the spot. The model that we were using was a price per foot model. And, everybody has opinions about that. But that's what we did. So we just had a big giant Excel spreadsheet that had every, 60 or 80 different unit prices that were on the price sheet that the salesperson had. And so it was a price per foot for the fence that was based on the height of the fence, the type of the fence, the type of the runners. There was add-ons for like, by the end of it, we were only doing postmasters. And so we had add-ons for like powder coating them, removal, temporary, all that kind of stuff. So it was, it didn't include everything, obviously, but we were probably getting 90% of the jobs quoted off of that price per foot.
Cool.
And then the rest of it, we'd, do the long way where we had to figure material and labor. It's my favorite question when somebody's like, oh, I don't know how much this costs. What do you want me to do?
Go figure out how much the materials are, and then figure out how many hours it's going to take, and then multiply that times how much the guys get paid. And
right. It's this is the same process you did last week. It's just a different type of fence. Come on. So yeah, I got to experience that a lot back then. Anyways, so then the estimate's done, right? Because he wrote up the estimate and handed it to the customer when they were there on site. Sure, that could have been digital. We could have electronicized. What? How would you say that? We could have made that electronic.
Yeah.
We could have modernized that. There we go. That word fits. We could have modernized that digitized it. And that was the thing that we played with some.
Electrified.
And we just never really got to doing that. Right. So I had an ArcSight account, played around with getting all that stuff set up. And kind of by the time that it got like I spent enough time to put gas in the car so that we kind of got to where we could use it was when we were pretty much out the door from the residential market. So we never really got to where we were using it. But
so Monday, you guys, this may not be, we don't need to get into this too deep, but it doesn't come pre-built. Basically, you had to build your workflow and build these automations so that past a certain day after the site visit or the estimate was sent, that then it would send an auto email follow up at something like 1 week, 2 weeks, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or something like that.
Did we already tell him it would go into Monday?
It went into Monday.
Oh, okay. It went in Monday.
I just said after it's uploaded. Yeah. So it's in Monday. We're using Monday, by the way, just in case.
Yeah. So that's how the jobs were being scheduled already. Right. So there was already a job created in there. There was a calendar in there. There were maps, blah, blah, blah. And so all we were doing after that was scanning and sticking it in there. And then just like you said, we built out automations in there that would do a follow-up email, probably 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, whatever, however that progression went. We did not make it follow up indefinitely until the status changed. You could do that if you wanted. You could send a follow-up email every week until you went in and,
told it to stop doing it basically. But now the old residential flow, I think stops at like 90. And then what it does, it's like retired into a folder or a group called old leads.
Yep.
So the data still exists.
Yeah. I never want to delete anything. I don't like deleting stuff at all. I like moving it somewhere so I don't have to see it, but I don't want to delete it.
I mean, if you get in a pinch, you can start calling those people. Also, really, if they call, what I've experienced more frequently is 6 months later, they call and they're like, hey, we got that thing last year
or 6 years later.
Right. And then we've got their information. I've got all the photos. I know their name. I got their email address. I know why they wanted the fence, and so it's good to keep all that data on the customer, and then we can always sell it,
Yeah, right. That's the way we actually made money on residential, selling customer information.
I'm just kidding. That is not serious.
That's not real. That's a joke.
Just being funny there. But yeah, so so they wanted to move forward, I guess, is the next. Where are we at moving forward in this process?
Yep. So if they wanted to move forward, then we'd obviously execute the contract, right? Go through that whole thing, collect a 50% deposit. We did allow like a 3-day cancellation period. And I don't remember if there's like $150 fee. And I think that was, I can't remember. I don't think it was during the 3 days. I think they could cancel within a 3-day period and there was no penalty or fee or anything. But if they canceled after the 3 days, then that's when there was like $150 fee for administrative work. And then, any material that we had ordered, if it was special order material, we had to sort through that. But so we did allow them a few days to kind of have that like buyer's remorse type stuff. Right. And then, we'd go ahead and start getting material ordered. We'd put a job on like a tentative schedule. So this was another board in Monday that also would send updates to the customer. And honestly, I don't remember exactly how it functioned, but I think it would send them like a tentative install date. And then as you moved it around and kind of like finalized it, then maybe it would send them another email with like an updated date or something like that. I can't remember. But we'd wait like 2 or 3 weeks. after they sign the contract, right? And then after that 2 or 3 weeks, then the same person who was taking the leads and scheduling the appointments now would start calling these people or emailing them at least once a week, right? So every customer who had a contract with us that we had not started installation on, we were reaching out to them once a week. And so that way, I mean, if nothing else, we were just saying, "Hey, we remember that you exist." Right?
Right.
We remember you signed a contract with us and we're still trying to work through our backlog and we're still trying to get to you. I didn't want a customer to ever call us and, well, really for any reason other than to say how awesome of a job we did. I didn't want them to ever call us, right? I wanted to be the one that initiated every contact with the customer. It's not possible. It's not feasible to really do that, but that was the objective. That was the goal, I guess we were working towards, right? And then once we got closer to actually being able to install, we would go ahead and call in a utility locate. And when we did that, I think this was done by way of another automation. Then they would, we had all kinds
We
of,
did have like a locate calendar automation, basically, that would you'd put in the locate expiration and locate number, which would then kind of move it through to remind you when to update the locate if necessary.
yep. And it would also notify the customer when we
Oh,
called in a
nice.
locate. So that way, hey, expect to see random people walking around in your yard at random times of the day because they're not going to tell us when they're coming. They're just going to show up at some point during the next 3 days.
Right. This part is one of my favorite things. I love this. Schedule the install and do a pre-install meeting on site with the customer.
Yep.
And for one, I like that as far as customer relations is concerned. But two, you give the project manager the opportunity to get eyes on the project just to be like, whatever. Oh, there's new landscaping that they put in since we bid the job, or, because I don't know. This has happened to me where I sent some guys to the site expecting it to be in the same shape that it was in the last time I was there, and it didn't look like that anymore.
Yep. Yep. And so also the other thing about that is the utilities, right?
Right,
If
for
they
sure.
had come out and located the utilities and, oh, well, it turns out you have a, Comcast line that runs under the full length of the fence. Now we have another hurdle to cross, right?
Sure.
So yeah, the pre-install meeting was, I think, really great. So they would go out, and normally it was the same salesperson that would go back and meet with them again, and they would kind of like finalize the layout. They would actually put flags in the yard and stuff like that, or stakes. We actually used wooden stakes, and we would try to put wooden stakes at all the ends, corners, and gates. And I liked the taller stakes because it kind of like simulates having a fence there, right? As where just the little tiny flags at the ground, you can't really visualize what it would be like to have a fence there. But I like the taller stakes because it's a little bit more of a simulation, and it gave them an opportunity to like drive their truck and trailer through where their gate is going to be and stuff like that. And so I think it was a really great method. And there was quite a few times whenever people would say, we've been living with these stakes for a few days and we actually would like this to be in a different spot. And so it did its job. And then
Right.
obviously when the installers got there, like there were wooden stakes in the ground. And so they knew where the fence was going. There was none of that like, oh, I thought it went here kind of thing. So, yeah, utilities, go over all the details of everything, is talk about like is your fence following the grade? Is your fence going to step? Is it going to flow with the grade? Like what's going to happen with all that? And just kind of discuss like the process. Um, expect us to be out here for a couple days tearing out, setting new posts, and then we're going to come back and build fence for a couple days or whatever that is. We'd kind of just run through that whole process with them again, give them a firm date on the installation. So this is when you can expect us to be here. And then,
All this there's a lot to this. There's
Yeah.
a lot of steps here. And I think I was using another, like a free software that was doing this for me. So Mondays cost a little bit. Not everybody's going to use Monday. If you want to try some, there's some free stuff out there. but to keep up with it, that's the way to do it, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not telling telling a salesperson or as the salesperson having to remember these steps. It's already laid out for me. You
Yep.
know, I do that for myself currently with my workflow as I set up sub items. So when it moves to pre-install, I have like a checklist that I get
Mhm.
to like check the box of I've completed the pre-install inspection.
Yep.
And so I was just saying when I was listening to you describe the process, I'm like, man, that sure would be a lot to have to remember. And then, or if you're printing off checklists, you're running a bunch of paper and keeping up with a bunch of stuff. But so the ease of having this software to be able to roll through your workflow
Yeah.
in that way, because we haven't even started the job yet, and we've got
We've been
6
talking for 40
processes, right?
minutes
So
about before the job.
just to kind of push home, like, man, when I start, the one I was using was ClickUp, and when I started
Yeah.
using ClickUp, it like revolutionized ultimately my stress level,
Mm.
because I wanted to do all this checklist that I had set out for myself, but trying to remember all that or keep up with a clipboard or whatever,
Yeah.
ultimately I was just running all that off a phone,
Mm-hmm.
and there you go.
Yeah. So initially, my whole kind of like thing like this was really I started the first one I ever made, I think, was in like the general contractor world, right?
Mhm.
And so I made a cover to go on the outside of a manila folder. And
Nice.
so I would print it off and just staple it to the outside of a manila
Right.
folder. And it kind of just had like check boxes for everything. And so I'd fill it all out by hand and, check all the boxes as I was going through this stuff. And so that was kind of my first experience with that. But I definitely preferred this tronified or whatever word
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah,
Digitized.
version of doing
Hydrolyze.
it for sure. But yeah, there's a lot of different options out there for software. We use Monday.
Sure.
I mean, and you could do a lot of this stuff.
I haven't used ClickUp in a long time, so it may be like super childlike and like just not
I was
real
thinking you could
beefy,
just
but
make PDF forms,
that's
use
true.
Google Docs or whatever that's free, save it all in a cloud drive of your choice. And like you could do it like that and not spend any money on this. And,
Yeah, I was using ClickUp in conjunction with Google Docs, and then everything was connected via Zapier. So that was kind of a cool
Yeah.
process. But I think to get back into this, I think we were at the make sure the materials here, locate's clear.
Yep. Yep. So, just before you send the crew out, like we'd want to make sure we have all our material, everything squared away, the locate was clear, all that. And then we'd schedule the crew to go out and actually perform the work. And so at this point, when you're on the job site and you're doing the work, we've done the best we could to capture all of the information on the front end. We've had several meetings with the customer. We've had several people in our office review this work order, make sure everything is complete and all the details are there. I mean, at this point, you've done what you can do getting to the job. And then from there, there's a million different scenarios of things that can come up. And we could sit here and talk for days about that, which we are not going to do. So you
This
just kind of,
portion of what we've described, I think, is the beginning in one of Tony Thornton's seminar class we that we went to at I don't mean it like that. The one that we went to at one of the Northeast Fence show is to prepare your team for success, right? So, and that's basically what we're talking about having done. We've already done the work, so the installers can do their job. They don't have to come get talked to by the customer about where the fence is and how it's going to go and all that. We've answered all those questions. So these guys get to go and just do what they're good at and build some fence.
Yep. Yep. And so, in my experience of installing residential fence, I would still find myself in that situation a lot of times where the customer would want to walk through the whole job again with me. And I mean, I would just say, okay, let's do it. Like, here's the plan. And just kind of recap what they have already heard.
I would just do this.
Yeah. Here, read this.
His name's Dan. You
Right.
talk to him.
Right. Yeah.
Just kidding.
So yeah, and then we get the job done, right? So we work through all the issues that come up throughout the course of installation, do the best we can. I try to kind of like put myself. I try to see both sides of it, right? I'm not just like, nope, that's going to cost us extra money, I'm not doing it. I try to see it from the perspective of the customer, and I try to take like that subjective look again and say, well, is anyone at fault, right, for whatever issue came up, and try to like that's going to be kind of where I start my analysis of an issue.
One common one that came to mind was complexity of digging holes.
It sucks, man.
But I
Sometimes
think on some of the residential contracts that we used to have, it would have like a $50 fee for roots in a hole.
It was in there, but I promise you, we never one time used. It was called a hard dig.
I wanted to.
Yeah, I know. And I never freaking did it.
I've wanted to, but you know what I do in that circumstance? I just time how long it takes. And then I'm like, that didn't take any longer than digging another hole.
Right.
It was just hard.
Right. It was more difficult.
Right. So,
I mean, so the point of that thing was like, have you ever been on a job and you go to dig a hole and you hit your postal diggers or auger on the ground and there's a concrete slab under a pile of leaves?
Now
that's a real thing that you got to have a conversation with the customer about, right? Now, if you go out there and you start digging and there's a root in the hole, I mean, suck it up, Buttercup, dig the hole. You know?
Kenny told me a story. Kenny's now he's a commercial salesman, among many other things.
Yeah.
Memphis Fence wonder child, Superman,
Renaissance
strong. Man. Yes, strong member of the Memphis Fence team. But we were talking about the old days, basically, when we install, and this doesn't really pertain to any of what we're talking about. Aside, it's just from that surprise thing that happens. I guess they were digging a post close to a footer, and I guess he thought he would just kind of break off a section of the footer.
Mm-hmm. I don't look forward to wherever this goes.
I don't know what happened, but I think the foundation was in such disrepair that this hole already existed, basically. But so what happened, his spud bar when he went to chip off this edge of loose, the overpour, the concrete footer, his spud bar just went underneath the foundation and went into the basement.
Nice. Nice.
Like literally went through underneath the slab and just ended up falling into the basement. And the homeowner was like, "Oh yeah, man, I've been pumping water out of this basement for years."
And so they didn't even care.
No, didn't care. And he knew it was like that. So that it wasn't a situation where something really bad happened that we did. I don't think there was anything that we did that we were at fault. But I was like, yeah, that's weird.
It's interesting. You get some homeowners that are like that. So the last residential job that I did, it was an 8-foot tall wood fence on steel post.
Yeah.
And so we were trying
steel post, you mean
postmaster.
Okay, thank you.
So we were trying to dig the holes, and that hard dig thing, this stuff was no joke. Right. And I mean, we were just out. So I have a steel 1-man auger, and I took that thing and it would just sit on the ground and spin.
Yeah, dude, I had that happen last weekend. I got about 16 inches and then it would just bounce around, and I was like, what is going on? Every hole.
Yep.
So what I did was I got a really small auger bit to start. I drilled a pilot hole in dirt.
Yeah.
It worked.
So the customer was out there and he's like feeling bad for us, right? Because of what we're enduring. And so we're out there with like 1-man augers, post hole diggers. Like we got a crew of people out there trying to do this. And so then he says, "Hey, I tell you what, let me pull these like bushes or these flowers or whatever out of my flower bed so you can get in here." And so we have a walk behind Bobcat, right? MT 85 or something like that. And so we took it in there and dropped the auger on the ground, and it wouldn't do anything either. It just sat on top of the ground spinning. And so there's a decent chance that somebody climbed up on top of the auger and was jumping on top of the loader.
Nice.
Trying to get the auger bit to go down in the ground. And finally, after all of that, it would make a little bit of progress every minute or so. And it was painful. So
yeah, that's crazy when the machine won't do it. But it was mini-me.
Yep.
Right? It wasn't a skid steer.
This
was a walk behind.
Yeah, it was a little walk behind. But I mean, and they don't really have that much down pressure. So, but still, it wouldn't do anything either. It was a mess. But anyways, the point of all of that was the customer was cool about it. And he was like, here, let me just move all of these plants. Let me clean out my flower bed so that you can get your machine in here without running over my stuff. And some of it, he's like, just run it over. I don't care.
Wow. He was willing to just let you guys do whatever it takes.
Right. So to your point about the customer that's like, oh, I'm not worried about that basement. You know, it leaks all the time. Like you get some that are like that, but then you get some that's like, what? You had to walk through my flower bed?
Right.
Oh no, y'all are going to
Well,
re-landscape my entire property now.
And I think I've learned the hard way to just be extremely observant of people's space, I guess. I don't want to make it sound like people are jerks about it's their home. They deserve it to be in whatever condition they want it in. And
Yep.
the way that it is when you get there should be the way that it stays, like even during the project. So I clean up while I'm
Yep.
working. Save for obviously, when I set posts, I'll leave the pile of dirt till the next day. I don't put the dirt back in the hole that day. That's the only mess that I leave, I think, for the whole course. I keep everything tidy. If I've got material on site, I make sure it's nice and stacked tidy. And that's, the way that we roll.
Oh yeah. I'll sweep off their driveway.
Right.
Like I keep brooms on the truck. I friggin' sweep everything
Right.
off, all of that.
Yeah. And more than the space that you occupied. Like I go up the whole driveway.
Yep.
So,
And I mean, I was taught too, whenever I was learning how to do this, that if you're going back to the truck, you take something with you.
right.
You take trash, you take a drop piece of wood, you take
You tell that
something
to the
back
wrong guy
truck.
and you're going to turn around and not have your extension cord,
Right.
You packed up prematurely
Right.
there, buddy.
They were ready to go, man.
So one last thing, while we're talking about customer satisfaction and the efforts we take in dealing with customers, so you guys would ask for reviews from them, and would you send them the link to your Google review?
Yep.
You would? Okay.
Yep.
Because I've
So-
heard a lot of people just say, leave me a review. And it's like, how? No one-
Where?
Why? Make
Right.
it easy.
So
that's our
again-
job, is to make it easy on the customer to deal with us.
Well,
right?
so before that, let's back up a little bit. So we finished the install.
Yeah.
So then what we would do is we'd wait a couple days. Right.
Yeah.
And then we would reach out to them and say, hey, are you happy with everything that happened here? Are you happy with our work? Is there anything we could have done better? Blah, blah, blah. Kind of have that conversation with them over the phone, hopefully. And then after that, we would send them a bill. And in the same email as the bill, it would have links to leave reviews and things like that in there.
Perfect.
And so we would also, even a little bit further, we would then try to get a review out of people. And so, because people didn't want to leave reviews, I've learned that people leave reviews when one of two things happen. Either one,
They're pissed.
they're really pissed off, or it's just like some out of this world experience that was so phenomenal, they can't help themselves but leave a review. And so those were the two reviews that we would get, but we really wanted more.
Those are the two reviews we currently have.
Right. So we wanted more.
Just kidding.
And so what we did was we started having like a drawing every year, and it would be based on all of the people that left us reviews on Google or Facebook or wherever it was. And the winner would win $1,000 cash prize. So one time a year, we gave somebody $1,000 back on their job, basically, if they won the drawing. And we actually did it. So we didn't just say we were going to.
Cool.
But yeah, and now we move on, and we got the next call, and we did the next job. I like that was good. I'm proud of myself.
And that's the end of that. Basically, we've reached the end of residential division that no longer exists.
It does not exist.
We've exhumed the body of the residential division of Memphis Fence Company.
We should one day talk about why we stopped doing residential. Nah,
We have a little bit.
So here's the title of a podcast. Should you stop doing residential? How about that? Anyways, I think that's it, man. I think we're good, right?
Thanks to all. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank
the
you,
lovely
Zach.
Ilaria, for helping us do this.
Thank you,
behind the
Ilaria.
scenes. And we look forward to talking to you guys some more in the future. Come
We'll
check us out in Reno, Nevada.
We'll see you soon.